Hey there, I'm Brittany Smith and welcome to Filmmaker Symposium. So I'm sure we've all heard the term binge watching your favorite Netflix or Prime Video show. And while binge watching is a really bad habit, it does point to humanity's craving for stories throughout the annals of history. And stories also play an important role in our lives that we may not even realize. So movie watching is often associated with laziness, and many times it is laziness. However, movie watching is essentially no different than listening to or telling a story. And all throughout history, mankind has told stories as a way of life. An example of this is when a child goes to bed, many times a parent will read them a bedtime story. Another example is if coworkers are on lunch break, many times they're telling each other stories of real-life experiences. And even advertising utilizes storytelling in order to connect with their clients. And the reason why storytelling resonates with human beings so much is because it goes beyond the intellect and goes deep into the heart and soul of the human being. Now, if someone were to tell you that anti-Semitism was wrong, you would most likely intellectually agree with them. However, if you watched a movie like Boy in Striped Pajamas or Schindler's List, most likely your heart is going to be wrenched and now your emotions are fully invested into this horrific idea of anti-Semitism. Another example would be if a young woman is warned about who she should marry, that she should be cautious, she might intellectually go, okay, yeah, whatever. However, if she watches or reads a story like Far from the Madding Crowd, she might be emotionally invested in the idea that there are dangers in autonomy and rejection of sound counsel. So stories have a way of communicating to our hearts in a way that other forms of communication cannot. So many times when we think of teaching truth, we often think of lectures or sermons. Now, those are great forms of communication. However, it is interesting to note that Christ did use parables mostly in his earthly ministry. And there are 3 reasons why I think parables are really effective. Firstly, parables get us to think. Many times, not everything is abundantly clear in a parable, which makes us have to ponder the story a little bit more and think through the elements of the story and how we fit in that story. Are we the good guy or are we the bad guy? Are we the type of person to love our neighbor? Or are we the arrogant, self-righteous son in the prodigal son parable? So all these things can help us think more through the elements of the story, which makes truth sink in a tiny bit deeper. The second benefit of using parables is to rebuke. So many times the Pharisees, when they heard a parable from Christ, they knew that he was talking about them and they would become angered. So parables served as a way of rebuking the Pharisees. Also in 2 Samuel, when Nathan goes and confronts King David, he doesn't confront King David just with words. He actually tells him a story. And by the end of the story, King David is completely enraged against the injustice of the resolution, only to find out that he is actually the character of injustice in his own story when Nathan says, "You're the man." So parables and stories have a great way of making us look at life from a different angle and to understand where we might be wrong. So thirdly, parables offer hope. When we take the parable of the prodigal son, we see someone who has rebelled against his father, gone out and become spiritually, morally, and financially ruined. So when he comes back and the father accepts him without asking any questions and welcomes him back to his estate, we see the hope of redemption and see the hope that we have in Christ. So if God in the flesh utilized the form of parables and storytelling, it might be reason to consider that this is actually a very powerful tool. So So I would be greatly remiss in not mentioning the main reason why humans crave story so much. The main reason is that we are actually characters in this grand drama of history. The story starts with the inciting incident when man is separated from the peace and union of God through the curse of sin. And then through a series of story acts, which are also known as covenants throughout history, God reveals his plan of redemption for his people. And then in the pinnacle of this story, Christ is sent by God the Father to go sacrifice himself for his people to redeem them from their sin. Christ's death then launches the climax of this story, in which the kingdom is going to constantly grow and eventually fill the whole earth with the beauty and knowledge of the Lord. So the reason why story is so embedded in our souls is because we are actually living inside of one, the greatest story ever told. So what are some reasons why you think stories are important for human beings? Let me know in the comments below. Also be sure to like and subscribe because you don't want to miss future episodes of Filmmaker Symposium, because I'm going to be talking about cheap and do-it-yourself ways to make C-stands, light diffusers, and negative fills. So stay tuned and I'll see you next time.